Okay, I think we're streaming. So at 5 o'clock, I'll call to order the December 2nd meeting of the Quality of Life Committee. And Jennifer, if we could get a roll call, that'd be great.
Of course. Councillor Michael Garcia.
Present.
Councillor Jamie Cassett Sanchez.
Here.
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Here.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Present.
And Chairwoman Carol Romero-Worth.
I am here as well. Okay, with that, are there changes to the agenda from staff?
Not tonight, Chair.
Great. Any changes from the committee? If not, motion to approve would be great.
Approve.
Second, anyone?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. If we could take the roll on that motion.
Councillor Jamie Cassett Sanchez.
Yes.
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Yes.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Chair Carol Romero-Worth.
Yes. All right, so that we are done with that. If we could then, are there changes to the consent agenda from staff?
No.
All right. Are there items that the committee would like to pull from the consent agenda?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councillor Villarreal.
Thank you. I have a quick question for 6A, just a clarifying question, and then B as in boy. And I'd like to co-sponsor D as in dog and co-sponsor G. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, other items from the committee? All right.
Madam
Is there a
Chair.
motion? Oh, Councillor Garcia.
Sorry for the delay.
No worries.
I would also like to co-sponsor consent item D as in dog and G as in great.
Okay. And then if there are no other things the committee would like to discuss, if we could move to approve the consent agenda as amended, that'd be great.
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
All right. If we could get the roll call on that motion in the second, please.
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Yes.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Jamie Cassett Sanchez.
Yes.
Chair Carol Romero-Worth.
Yes. All right. Are there changes to the minutes from November 4th from staff and or the committee?
None from staff.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
It's a motion and a second to approve the minutes from November 4th. If we could get a roll call on that motion, please.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Yes.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Jamie Cassett Sanchez.
Yes.
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Yes.
Chair Carol Romero-Worth.
Yes. All right, and then we will move on then to item 6A. Councillor Villarreal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question for Kyle. Is he on? There he is. Hi, Kyle. Just wanted to see if this amount for this particular grant that will be covered by Homeland Security in the amount of, what is it? $87,580. So this grant we're receiving from Homeland Security, this just offsets salary expenses, or will we be using this funding for equipment and supplies?
Councilwoman or Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal. Sorry, it's been a while since I've done this.
Okay.
This is exclusively for the salary and benefits for an additional staff member.
Okay, and I realized you said that in the memo, it's just that when you read through the agreement, it talks about equipment.
So the agreement is very general for multiple municipalities. They boilerplate these types of sub-grant agreements. We are exclusively using it for the salary and benefits.
Okay, sounds good. That's all I had. I move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve item 6A. If we could get a roll call, please.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Jamie Casas Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Chris Rivera,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal,
Yes,
Chair Carol Romero Worth.
Yes. So with that, we'll move to 6B. Counselor Villarreal, Councilwoman Villarreal, you also pulled that item.
thank you, Madam Chair. Just had some amendments that we had discussed, or things that I thought should be added to the legislative priorities, and it's attached to our to Prime Gov. And I don't know if you want me to just walk through them, or
Probably a good idea. I did have a chance to look at them, but I don't know if the rest of the committee did, so probably best to just walk through those.
okay, so essentially I added, be it further resolved that the governing body supports a statewide ban on the use of no-knock warrants and requiring the use of body-worn cameras during the execution of any search warrant, as established by the ordinance that we just passed, 2020-32. So I just want to make sure that we're in alignment, that we're considering that, as because there were some restrictions that we had talked about at the state level. If it wasn't a city official and if it was a state cop or sheriff, we would not be able to prevent them from the use of no-knock warrants. So that's why I added that language. On page 4, line 16, I took out supports because we'd already used it in the previous beginning of that sentence, and just put advocates for. On page 4, line 18, I added a new paragraph related to evictions, that it be further resolved that the governing body supports and endorses any legislation that creates prevention mechanisms and or funding support for individuals and families who may or are experiencing evictions as a result of the COVID pandemic. And we've already had executive orders around that topic. So I just thought it made sense that we continue supporting that. And there's also legislation being considered at the state level around evictions. So I just wanted to reinforce that issue. And then page 6, line 18, I took out in support of any legislation as it relates to the municipal league, and just put on certain legislation. It just follows what we said in the memo. So it doesn't generally say we support every single thing that the legislative priorities outlined in the municipal league's documents, but I think I just wanted to make it sure that we're not following every single thing that we would consider it based on what legislation is coming forth. So, and then priorities was just a typo. I thought it said priority and I changed it to priority. So that's all I have for changes and additions. And I stand for questions if anyone wants to ask me any clarifying questions.
Yeah, so Director Wheeler, I know you're very familiar with this resolution, and maybe you wanted to comment?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and Jesse might be able to chime in. I just wanted to clarify, Councilor Villarreal. I think the intent was to express City of Santa Fe support for the entire legislative agenda of the Municipal League that's presented there. Is that not correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct. I think, as I mentioned in a previous meeting in years past, we've sort of picked and chosen which ones we wanted to support from the Municipal League priorities, and this year we just sort of lumped them all in there. So if this committee or the governing body decides that there are specific ones they want to actively support and certain ones that they don't want to add on there, then we can certainly do that as a different and substitute out the attachment A in a different format.
And if I could just add
I
one more.
guess that would be my concern, is that we aren't saying which ones we don't like. So I think it might make it hard, especially for our lobbyists, to stand up and be in support or not in support because doesn't know which is which.
So can I ask a quick clarifying question on that?
Here's our lobbyist, Mark.
Before
Mr.
Mark
Grant.
jumps in, I just want to clarify, and maybe Jesse can clarify this for us. The Exhibit A that you all attached, that's not the entire legislative priorities document for the municipal league. It was portions of it. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman, it is the legislative priorities that the municipal league voted on. It's not all of the resolutions that they adopted last year. It's just the ones they adopted as priorities for the upcoming session.
Okay, so it is a comprehensive document for this legislative session, correct?
For the municipal league, yes.
Okay. At first, when Jesse and I talked about it, I thought it was just portions of it that really aligned with some of the priorities that we listed on our this legislative document. But now that you're saying it's all of it, I think there were certain things in there that they were a little bit vague as it relates to public safety. That was the only section that I felt like wasn't very strong in their approach to what may be coming down the pike for legislation around looking at public safety. And the reason why I say that is because I've been attending some of the interim committee hearings on public safety, and there's specific legislation coming down from different legislators that's not supported or at least explicitly stated in the municipal league's description or their endorsement legislation. So that was the only thing that I was concerned about. But I mean, I don't know what's the best way to handle this, because the majority of what they added or that we put in Exhibit A that we included, I think it makes sense. I just want us to be cautious because I think it was a little bit watered down and a little bit vague as it relates to public safety.
Right, so if I can so you're concerned that there are things that we would support that aren't included in what the municipal league has included.
Right.
And I guess there's not much we can do about that, I don't think.
Well, it was more that what they are supporting, we may have a different stance on it as it relates to public safety, that we would have more specific, I don't know, I'm just trying to,
Well, there'd be nothing to prevent a counselor or a mayor from appearing at hearings of things that we identify with and think are important. So it doesn't preclude us from having a presence in support of specific items that maybe didn't make the list.
I guess the only sticking point I had is the way it was worded in our resolution is it just says any municipal league priorities. And it's really certain municipal league priorities. And that's what we stated in the document, in your memo. In your memo, it says, if it would come up, there we go. The resolution also directs the city's lobbyists to support certain.
I don't know if it's my internet or your internet, but you've just faded out.
How about now? Am I good? Okay. The resolution, the language in the memo says.
Councilwoman, you faded out. I have no idea what you said.
Councilor Romero Worth.
Madam Chair, I think it's.
I'm hearing Councilor Villarreal loud and clear.
Is that right? Is it my internet? All right, sorry. Maybe you all can catch me up. Can we try again?
How about now?
I can hear you.
Okay. In our memo, It says the
If I
resolution.
could,
Hold on, let me just read it. It says the resolution
heard-
directs the city's lobbyists to support certain New Mexico Municipal League priorities as established in Exhibit A.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'm so sorry for that. I feel like that's leftover language from last year where we were selective rather than where we were comprehensive about supporting it. But regarding your concern, I think we'd love to hear from Mark Duran. I think he can help us clarify. But what my understanding is that the vague language is actually helpful to us and our lobbyists because it does allow, without further council action, it actually does allow our lobbyists to support particular legislation that fits even in that loose, vague description. So it may actually be helpful since, and you'll see there's similar vague language in the legislative priorities resolution for the sustainability initiatives because Speaker Egolf is supposed to be coming forward with a bunch of sustainability legislation, which we haven't seen. And so I think the vague language to some extent is helpful to us because it is hard to respond in time with a resolution of support during the session, right, to get it through the governing body. And so it is good to think about a broader language that would allow us to work. And maybe we could ask Mark Duran if that is his understanding as well, if that kind of language supports our needs better.
Councilwoman Villarreal, are you all right with hearing from Mark?
Yes, and I'm also trying to find the section on public safety that I had concerns about.
Okay, Mr. Duran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Nice to be with you this evening. You know, we've had these discussions about the municipal league resolutions. I think every year we approach a legislative session, it's a little bit difficult. I can see both approaches, right? One approach where, and I think it's in the existing resolution, where we just say we support all the New Mexico Municipal League resolution, right? Everything that is in their resolution. Now, keep in mind, that's a positive, right? They represent the municipalities. They're not likely going to do anything negative towards the city, but it also is an opportunity for them, and you can't blame them from a marketing perspective, right? They then have the endorsement of the city of Santa Fe for every one of those items that are in their resolution. On the other hand, I think you either do it that way or the other approach is to then say something like, and this isn't me wanting control or anything, the city of Santa Fe supports all those New Mexico Municipal League resolutions that the city lobbyists working with the administration deems are important for the city of Santa Fe for the 2021 legislative session. And so I would suggest doing one or the other cleanly because from experience, one of those then best works during the session, at least for me, in representing you.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. I think the section that I'm not quite sure about, and we haven't really researched this in detail, it's about the concerning police body cameras and public record implications. And this particular resolution that the Municipal League put forth talks about having restrictions on inspections to Public Records Act, requiring the release of certain body-worn camera footage that addresses certain aspects. So that was, I don't know enough about that to say that that's something that the city or at least individual councilors support. So what would you suggest then? Because that to me isn't very clear.
Mr. Duran, do you have a thought about that, or Director Wheeler?
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the committee, my thought about that is if, and this is important, and I appreciate the point, if you were to start looking at all the wording and all the language in many of the individual resolutions, right? It's a resolution for each one of these major items. There could be point of contention as to what is exactly meant there, what is it doesn't mean, what does it include, what does it not include, are we in favor of that, would we want it stronger, not stronger, and so hence the recommendation, either either go for them all. Keep in mind, when you go for them all, we've endorsed them all. We've endorsed them all by resolution. It's a little bit harder if we ever had questions or were against one, and usually we're not, because they are the group that recognizes us. Or you then have this other language that then says that I am directed to work with the administration on all of those resolution items that we support and that we can advance with our endorsement, testimony, etc., during the legislative session. I don't know if that answered your question, and I'm repeating myself now from what I first said, but it's just one approach or another that I think is best.
Councilwoman Villarreal, would that satisfy your concerns?
I'm not quite sure what Mr. Duran's suggesting.
I think he's suggesting that we put in language that allows essentially the administration, the mayor, and staff to kind of direct which things we'll ask our lobbyists to stand up in support of, so that we make sure that, you know, they're in line with our values and what we see as important for the city of Santa Fe.
And would that be separate than what we're
Yeah, it would be language, it would be kind of general authority language to allow the mayor and our lobbyists to be responsive almost in the moment, to Director Wheeler's point, that there may be things that we think are really important that we sort of know are out there, but haven't been brought forward yet, and, you know, would allow kind of some fluidness, I guess, in how we.
That's actually why I wanted to change the language in the resolution, just to say, instead of saying in support of any legislation, that it says in support of uncertain legislation.
Right, but the problem with that language is it's not clear as to what Mark should or shouldn't be standing up in support of, because we're not being clear in that direction. Whereas if we pass the authority to the administration, to our leadership, to the mayor, to make that call as in real time, and of course you could, you know, if there are things that you are seeing that are popping up that you want to make sure as a city, we are being in support of, you could, you know, be working with the mayor to make sure that that's communicated to our lobbyists.
I'm just trying to think of a better way to say that.
I think Mark's got some language. Maybe we could work on it and have it ready down the line.
I mean, it's just really just one word. That's why I'm wondering. Yeah.
Director Wheeler, you had a hand raised.
Thank you so much, Chair. One of the things that Mark said in the first sort of rendition of the language that he's proposing that we would say would support municipal league legislation or municipal league supported legislation that is aligned with the goals and objectives of the city of Santa Fe as defined in this resolution, right? So then at least it keeps it in some kind of a container that the governing body has actually endorsed these particular priorities, and it's not just anything out of anywhere. And so I think that would be helpful.
That sounds good. So why don't I'm okay with withdrawing that one word change, but the rest of the amendments I feel like are important.
Okay, are there other thoughts from the committee about the other changes? Councilor Rivera, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not really a concern about the other changes, but really just wanted to ask Mr. Duran a question about if we were to say that we support all municipal league legislation. I know it's been withdrawn, but just trying to clarify this. What would happen then if a counselor went up and spoke against a bill that the municipal league was trying to propose? What kind of issues does that create?
Madam Chair, usually not fun ones, right? Just this awkwardness, and obviously they'd be speaking on behalf of themselves and not the governing body. That'd be the first clarification. But it is, I could go through a number of pros and cons and risks, especially with the broad endorsement of it all, as opposed to what has come through the administration, what I naturally know, what I would have worked on with the administration. And I'm not necessarily advocating one approach or the other. What I am advocating is for strictly down one approach or another. It's the middle ground that then becomes even more difficult than the pros and cons of either choice.
Yeah. And are there bills or legislation that come up throughout the session that you either have to make quick decisions on, or come to the mayor or city manager and get quick decisions on, that you can't really wait for our process to either support or endorse on behalf of the city?
Madam Chair, yes, and I try to use my experience and what I understand the administration and the council wants. You know, really what happens is some resolution like this turns into a piece of legislation, right? That someone has introduced, and we all know what happens. That piece of legislation is going to get amended, and it's going to get amended back and forth. And sometimes it's going to be numerous amendments. Sometimes it's going to be quick, and we're just going to have to a little bit act on the fly, but understanding that those amendments can change that legislation a lot. And in my experience working with the city of Santa Fe and how involved legislators are and have, you know, set policy for the state of New Mexico through their opinions, flexibility is important for me in representing you.
Very good, thank you. So I do support the rest of the amendments from Councilwoman Villarreal, and would like to hear from Councilwoman Vihil Coppler about her amendments. I don't see her on, but perhaps at a different meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay. Other comments on this amendment?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just to be clear, so it'll stay the same item, or the amendment 1, 2, 3, and 5 will still stay on, and I will take off 4 so that we could find some other language that makes sense for that section.
Yeah, and it might be easier if you just bring a separate amendment with that language. So.
Okay, so hopefully Mr. Duran can, I think you had framed, or maybe Mrs. Wheeler, Director Wheeler had also suggested some language that I think made sense. I didn't write it down, so if someone could send that to me, and then we could add that in for the next meeting.
I think that'd be good. We can maybe, Mr. Duran, maybe offer some language to the councilwoman, and then she can forward on to Jesse when she's happy with it. Does that make sense? All right, is there a motion from the committee to approve this amendment, striking item 4?
Move to approve the amendment as amended.
Good.
All right, is there a second?
I second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call on approving this amendment?
Councillor Jamie Casas Sanchez,
Yes.
Councillor Chris Rivera,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal,
Yes.
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Carol Romero Worth.
Yes. Okay, so we do have another amendment, as Councilor Rivera pointed out. It is from Councilor Viho Koppler. She is not here tonight, and I also have, I would like to hear from her about what she's thinking in offering her amendment. So I do think we need to take that up at a separate meeting. So with that, do we have a motion and a second to approve this item as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call then on approving this item as amended with Councilwoman Villarreal's changes?
Yes, just give me one moment.
No worries.
Sorry, just getting PrimeGov set up. Okay, I'm ready. Councilor Chris, sorry, can you repeat the motion and second again?
So the motion was made by Councilor Rivera, second by Councilwoman Villarreal, to approve item 6B with the amendment by Councilwoman Villarreal. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with that tonight. Sorry.
Me too. Okay, Councilor Chris Rivera,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal,
Yes.
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Jamie Casas Sanchez,
Yes.
Chair Carol Romero Worth.
Yes. All right, with that, we are through our consent agenda and we will move on to presentations. The first presentation is by the Santa Fe Food and Nutrition Program report and recommendations. We have with us David Sundberg and Pam Roy, I believe, too, correct? I see Pam's name, but not her face. There's Pam. Hi, how are you? Thank you for joining us tonight. All right, so I'll give you both the floor to present the report. Thank you.
Wonderful. Good evening, Madam Chair, councilors, Mr. Mayor, I think might still be on, and everyone participating in Zoom land. Thank you so much for giving us the time to present to you. My name is David Sundberg, and I am co-chair of the Santa Fe Food Policy Council. We recently, completed Strengthening and Expanding Food and Nutrition Programs in Santa Fe report. Lengthy title, and it holds a lot. This report differs from others in that we use the data from numerous studies and reports, input from experts in nutrition, emergency feeding programs, food service directors, and others to break down the challenges regarding food access, nutrition, infrastructure within our community. And then we offer recommendations along with potential actions to resolve these challenges. Our intent was to write a report that is relatively easy to read. It's not weighed down by overwhelming amounts of data and studies. We can discuss and present those to anyone who wishes to know more, but chose to leave those out so that we would hope that people would find it more accessible and actually read it. And then provide for solutions rather than just problems. We divided this report into 4 sections. We have an introduction that lays the groundwork for needing to support a local and regional food infrastructure or food value chain. Youth and senior food and nutrition programs, food procurement policies for feeding programs, and food production and infrastructure needs. In the 3 policy sections, we further deconstructed the information into 3 subsections. Identifying the issues or problems at hand, creating recommendations based on data and advice from experts for each issue, and we offer actions to support solutions for each. This last portion, I feel, really sets this report apart from others. It offers concrete, actionable, and most importantly, feasible actions. Some of them are through partnerships with other agencies, organizations, and governmental offices. Others are through departmental priority, and others through executive and legislative actions. By delineating each of the issues, recommendations, and solutions in this way, We really feel it will allow individuals to identify specific items that they and their organization or departments can tackle. It removes that burden of one entity or agency trying to solve the entirety of problems within the food system. Many of these recommendations are also scalable. For example, in the Procurement for Youth and Elder Meals Program section, we suggest that city procurement agencies be required to give a 5% preference to local vendors or farmers. In other words, to give them point preference for being local, adding to their bid. This process can be scaled by adding points over the time as purchasers realize the value of buying local food. It can be applied to multiple departments and product services outside of the food programs where we engage. It can be utilized at a state level, and it can be expanded as internal supply builds, which is very important that if we don't have food or resources available, there's no way anybody can purchase them. But the more that they get supported, the more they will grow. Every expansion will be a significant gain and benefit to our community. So why are we recommending these changes and actions? Well, as detailed in the recent Farm and Food Report compiled by Ken Meter at Crossroads Research Center for the Healthy Soil Working Group, which just organized in the last 2 years, and for Climate Change Leadership Institute, we in New Mexico export 97% of the products we grow, raise, and produce here in New Mexico. 97%. We import, conversely, 95% of the food we consume. That's valued at around $6.5 billion annually. Some big numbers. Unfortunately, too, adding to the problem, 70% of the operating farms in the state don't actually generate positive income. They're putting more resources into growing and producing the food that people consume than they actually gain out of income from it. In this system, we are undervaluing our natural resources, our history, our culture, our workforce, and our ability to do for our own, while simultaneously lining the pockets of massive corporations that care more about profits than the health and well-being of people. However, through good policy, investment, leadership, community engagement, awareness, and collective efforts, we can break this existing food chain. We can replace it with one built on values, equity, sustainability, understanding, and healthy communities. Doing so will not only benefit our bodies and minds, quite naturally, but our natural environment and our economy. Supporting and enacting these recommendations will allow our elders and kids to share community-supported meals together, allow food service directors to prepare nutritious, culturally appropriate menus and meals that people will actually eat. It will help farmers do what they love, raise food. And it will keep tax dollars in our communities rather than bleeding out to other states. We know this won't all be done overnight or even in a year. Changes like this do take time and sustained effort. However, by adopting a resolution to support this report and its actions, and then using it now and ongoing as a guiding document when making decisions regarding procurement, directing staff to follow its recommendations, and telling our state and federal officials, like you were just going over, that these issues are a priority in our community, we can make the necessary changes. My colleague Pam Roy will detail potential upcoming legislation which will help us steer in the right direction, and we'll make ourselves available for any questions this evening and would love to engage in ongoing discussions over time. Thank you so much for your time, much appreciated.
Thank you. Welcome, Pam.
Thanks, Madam Chair and council members, Mayor Weber, and staff too. I really want to say I really appreciate your staff who are with us tonight. And I know Mr. Rinaldi was on a little bit earlier from Senior Services, but Jennifer and Jesse have been really helpful along the way here. Liz Camacho and Rich, we get a chance to work more directly on the economic development side of this, like David was saying. So, and they participated in the process of developing this report and the recommendations. And it's both city and county, and through our Santa Fe Food Policy Council, as you know, we are, and I'm actually the coordinator through Farm to Table as a partner organization. But the council itself is apprised of city and county appointed business members like David, people working in food service, who are working in schools, who are working in agriculture. So it's a really broad, diverse group of individuals. And through a lot of our committee work, we've really drawn on a larger community around not only this report, but the efforts of food systems initiatives for the city and the county and regionally. So and we also really appreciate the city's support in so many of these ongoing efforts around our local food system. So to add to what David was saying, some of the recommendations in this report, one of the things that really, I hate to say it helped us, but it opens some broader, newer avenues to thinking about how we see nutritious food within our food system, especially for seniors, children, early childhood education program, preschool and Head Start kids. We call these upstream approaches. So these are not emergency suggestions and solutions and recommendations. They are really about looking at nutrition through the lens of institutional purchasing, as David mentioned. So several, and these will be familiar to you, but we're expanding them, of course. You all have been very supportive of some of our legislative actions, state legislative actions, and Mark Duran, who was with us a little bit ago, being a key partner in that during the legislative session. He's really great to work with. But prioritizing, we will see this coming session, so several priorities that Santa Fe Food Policy Council and in partnership with our statewide New Mexico Food and Agriculture Policy Council see as priorities with these recommendations are maintaining the New Mexico grown produce and fresh fruits and vegetables for school meal programs, that's K through 12, $400,000 in the public education department's budget, yet it got trimmed a bit during the special session. We've got 58 school districts, including the Santa Fe Public Schools, that apply for those funds, utilize them. That $400,000 equates to $1.15+ million in purchases by our schools across the state. So if you think about this, not only about the nutrition side of it, but the economic side of it for our local food economy and for our farmers, that's almost quadruple, it will triple the funding that the state provides as an incentive. And so that's part of the goal here, is getting really beautiful fresh produce in schools. Santa Fe Public Schools, Betsy Call, who's our school food service director, is an absolute champion in this. A benefit of that partnership with the public education department is that Santa Fe Public Schools is part of a working with 10 school districts to purchase local. That helps school districts to plan, as well as it helps farmers to plan their production and how much growth they can look forward to. Secondly, and this is where we've been working very closely with Mr. Rinaldi with the Senior Services Program. We have a bill that is being reintroduced by Senator Stefanix and Representative Gail Armstrong for $250,000 for New Mexico grown produce into senior meal programs. We just finished with Aging and Long-Term Services, a $50,000 pilot project from February to June, right through COVID, 3 counties, senior centers, 102,000+ meals to seniors that had New Mexico grown produce in it for that $50,000. Every penny got spent. Farmers were ecstatic. Seniors loved it. And during the pandemic, what we're learning is, and I think this transition is going to stick with us, there was an increase in senior participation in any meal program, whether it be curbside or home delivered over the pandemic. That hasn't slowed down. And Gina will say, Mr. Rinaldi will certainly share that probably almost double, a lot of our counties and cities are finding almost double the need to transport food to seniors home deliver. And so we're adding that factor into this. We're looking at policies and recommendations that we might not see right yet, but seniors would love to get a bag of produce. So some of the produce that we deliver to them, was actually like a salad and fixings, a local tomato with a beautiful head of lettuce recipe. And so we might be looking at what are some of those procurement requirements that could shift, that create more opportunities to buy local and really create fresh opportunities for our seniors. The third piece of legislation is brand new, is to expand early childhood nutrition programs. Representative Dow is sponsoring that. $100,000 just to start, but the idea is to really evolve this program into those very early years, the nutrition programs that are being provided, like the, and David mentioned it, some of the intergenerational ones. So there's the child and adult food program, child and adult care food program, where you're feeding both seniors and little ones. And so we're now evolving into that. The fourth component to this work in that sense is that because of all of this work, because of also your ongoing support of this work at the state level, we now have an interagency initiative happening across more than half a dozen agencies. So Aging Long-Term Services, Public Education, Early Childhood Education, Department of Agriculture, Public or the Health and Human Services, DOH, Department of Health, and I'm hoping for the tribal affairs, tribal government as well to join in on this to create a permanent New Mexico grown program with upstream initiatives like the ones that we've just shared with you. One final thing, in the report, we speak to recommendations around infrastructure, coordination amongst agencies and organizations, private businesses to build out local food systems initiatives. So like cooperatives or food hubs, a place where farmers can bring product to a place, it can be further put together for various sales, things like that. That infrastructure, the COVID has really set the stage for the huge need we need for refrigeration, transportation, the coordination of that around local food, in particular local food. So the fourth bill that we're really focusing on is one called the Healthy Food Financing Initiative. This would be based in the Department of Economic Development. It would draw on federal funds. Every year, the state could apply for up to $2 million of funding to be able to provide resources to communities that want to build out food hubs, food retail, but it's focused on healthy, equitable, racial equity being at the center of this work as well, lifting up people in the local sectors, looking at creating more job opportunities, fair wages in those job opportunities, and really building out more local economic options for food and agriculture initiatives. So those are some examples of where we're headed, and also where we can head in the immediate with these recommendations right into the legislative session. And I want to thank you all too, David and I both do. We've provided some information and some ideas around resolutions in support, not only of this report, but also you all have supported resolutions on some of the things I mentioned, but legislative. Some of those legislative things also help us really focus on these federal programs, because of course school meals are federally regulated. We think in 2021, we're going to see the child nutrition reauthorization come back up, and that's where we'll be able to advocate for the programs like these that we were just discussing. We will start to begin the Farm Bill again, the federal Farm Bill again in 2021, working on that. So one of our requests is to work with you all on a resolution support of this report and some of the recommendations in it. And we've provided some of that, and I know Councilor Romero Worth and Cassett Sanchez have offered to co-sponsor potentially that resolution. So we really appreciate your willingness to take us on and work with us on all of this. So.
And Councilwoman Villarreal.
Yep, and always a supporter. Thanks. Thank you very much, Councilwoman Villarreal. Really appreciate it. And I know you all wholeheartedly care about these, and we really appreciate that the City Council has been so supportive over time, and look forward to working with you into the future.
Great, thank you. Thank you for this report. Are there questions from the committee?
I have my hand up.
Yes, Councilwoman Villarreal.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Sundberg and Pam Roy for providing this very clear and succinct document that has recommendations that we've been talking about for a while. I used to serve on the Food Policy Council, and so this is near and dear to my heart, and have always enjoyed working with Pam on not just legislation, but just ways to try to incorporate fresh food and vegetables and fruit into our systems. And it's been challenging, I have to say. It's like an ongoing process. The procurement thing has always been on the top of my mind, and I know we've brainstormed about this in the past, and so I appreciate the recommendations. I think they make sense, and it's always shocking to me that we haven't figured out how to make this work still, even though it's very clear there's some ways that we could do it. So I'm just letting you know I am willing to help in any way possible to support a resolution as these efforts, as we decide what's the best approach to taking pieces of this document and actually making it into policy. So I'm interested in the procurement piece. I did have a question about the procurement preference for local food vendors. We have a local preference for other vendors and different aspects of our procurement, and it's actually 6%. So I was curious why you all decided only 5%.
Honestly, I think because that provides some better clarity. It's been difficult to uncover what the preferences are. So thank you for the clarity on that. And we certainly wouldn't want to downgrade it. We'd always want to kind of up those numbers. And one of the other kind of pieces of that is making sure that we're using it. You know, there's some great laws in place that are difficult to discover, are challenging to understand, and really could provide for great procurement policies and utilization. But it's a matter of then directing department heads and, you know, food service operators within departments to actually go in and make use of those. And that's one of the things we want to write the report for, is to create that understanding that good policy only goes so far. It's taking those next step actions, especially within government, and requiring that they be enacted. So that's a good piece of it. I'd love to compliment though the city council. One of the things we were working on early on was to put in raising that threshold for what departments or people could spend with any one vendor before they had to go into the bidding process. And we pulled it out because you did it. So raising that threshold to the $5,000, and I believe it's $20,000 at this point, really opens a lot of doors for farmers to be able to get their products into different agencies. For example, like Pam said, Gina Rinaldi was on earlier, into senior services. It'd be remarkable to start those relationships and really bolster them.
So
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Pam.
I was just saying, Madam Chair and Councilor Villarreal, to add to David's, what would be helpful might be to write this out, you know, like all the different aspects of that procurement, the 6%, what does that really mean? Is there something that we need to look at to just do a slight amendment that really allows us to do, like David mentioned, you know, preference, like slightly additional preference that really provides an incentive, maybe not. As David mentioned, that threshold's huge for us because City of Las Vegas, for example, their threshold is 0. That means they have to go out for bid for everything, like a carrot, a pencil, 3 bids for absolutely everything. Being able to have that flexibility with the City of Santa Fe up to that $20,000 threshold. We want to make sure that we understand what that threshold means. Like if we're working with Mr. Rinaldi with the senior centers, any of the early childhood education programs, things like that. What does it mean to put that into practice so that it's really practical for Mr. Rinaldi and his staff, and making it as easy and as accessible as possible? And also, what does it mean to the budget process, and what are the ways that we can make this as simple and as straightforward as possible? That's would be a question we'd love to learn a little bit more about that. That's okay. Question back.
Great. Councilwoman Villarreal, did you have other questions?
Yeah, I guess, well, all I wanted to say is I'm willing to work with you all on this and try to figure it out. It is somewhat complicated, I have to say, in the procurement world. But I don't think it's not, I think it's doable. We have to figure out the right approach and where it fits in. And I think there's other, I wouldn't want to call them barriers, but things that probably need to be adjusted. I always feel like there's limitations when it comes to trying to work with AAA, which is the Area Agency on Aging. I remember in the past, it's always been challenging for us because they have these certain guidelines and it doesn't provide flexible meal service as you had indicated in the report. So I'm interested more to hear about that later, maybe when we have more time to figure this out. But I think that those are issues. I think it's really hard for me personally to have to blanket approve these contracts with big corporate food distributors that we just did recently. I mean, I just like cringe at it because I don't think they're providing the kind of food. I mean, sure, we need to be in partnership with them. And some of them are actually in partnership with local food vendors, but not as many as we should be, or local farmers, I should say. So I'm just interested to figure out how we can hold them to the line about supporting local. But we recently passed those, and it's unfortunate that we have to like decide that that's our only option for local food for our, not just seniors, but even, I mean, we used to provide also meals for our youth programs too. So just letting you know, I'm here to support in any way we can to get this policy moving forward. And so just be in touch with me about kind of next steps, and thank you for your presentation.
Other questions from the committee or comments? All right, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for your work, and we'll work on dotting the I's and crossing the T's on the resolution and get that moving forward. And hopefully you'll have it in time for the legislative session. We wish you well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
very much. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, we will move on now. We have an update. I believe we have Director Brown on the line here, getting PrimeGov back. Oh, no, we're not there. We are, I guess, well, I'm not sure who's doing this present.
Yeah, Madam Chair and members of
Yes,
council, Liz
so we
Camacho.
need to do Santa Fe Promise. Who's
Yes,
doing that?
Liz Camacho will do the presentation for Santa Fe Promise, and I'll do the public Wi-Fi.
Okay, great. I didn't have that on the agenda, so thank you. I appreciate the help.
Sure.
I'm not sure if Eli Isaacson is on too, because he's really been kind of leading the way. So I think we'll go ahead. I'm just going to screen share and then
just joined us, so you're both here now.
Right on.
Sorry, Chair, that was my fault. I didn't see that he had entered to promote him.
No worries. He's here now, just in time.
Excellent. Do you want to start off, Eli?
Sure. Thanks, Liz. I'll do a quick intro and then turn it back to Liz to run through the slide presentation. As you know, the first iteration of the Santa Fe Promise was started earlier this summer in June, when we were first sort of dealing with the first wave of COVID in the community, and it was really focused on finding or asking both individuals and businesses to take the Santa Fe Promise, which was a code of conduct campaign oriented around COVID safe practices like hand washing, wearing face coverings, using hand sanitizer, and socially distancing. As we received CARES funding later this fall, or earlier this fall, I guess, we really sort of reoriented the Santa Fe Promise into sort of a shift into what we're calling Santa Fe Promise 2.0, which is really about directed and targeted messaging to the zip codes in our community that are sort of experiencing the highest rate of cases and transmission. And so what we did is we assembled folks from various divisions and departments in the city. So obviously myself and others in land use have been working on this. Liz Camacho and Lauren Lucero in economic development have been working on it. We've had folks in tourism, folks in arts and culture, as well as our constituent services and communications teams coming together to really orient the city's efforts and energy around speaking directly to those in communities that are most vulnerable. And I think, Liz, if you want to take over from there, maybe talk about this notion or concept of a high vulnerability index and sort of what we've been doing to reach constituents that fall into that category.
Certainly. So I think before we were really focused, and we're still focused, I think part of what we can say about this messaging effort is that I think Eli is the person who said this, which is we're kind of changing the wheels on the bus as the bus moves along. So it's almost like we wanted to get everything together at once, but the need is we have such a strong need that really it's just like, oh, we wanted to get kit bags together, but we went ahead and just gave away masks. We went and gave away sanitizers before we had the promotional material. So we've just kind of been adapting. But I did want to present an update because you guys gave such great feedback on the last time on the high vulnerability index communities. We've also been working really closely with Santa Fe County and trying to make sure that we're aware of all of the community development programs that have been going on. Just to give you an idea, we had a lot of ideas. $200,000 is not as much as I had imagined it would be, but we can give you just an overview of what 200,000 we've been going on. And we've tried to be, I know we spoke about procurement earlier, so we try to be the most effective with the funding. So some of the things that we bought, you'll see is the plastic bottles. Why do we buy plastic bottles? To put the sanitizer in. If we start doing that, when you buy them individually, it's crazy. It just blows up the cost astronomically. So we had to buy them separate, which then we've got manpower, which we brought in YouthWorks to help us fill in the bottles, make these kit bags that you'll see a little bit more about in the presentation. We also try to make sure that we get as much possible from local vendors. So part of those hand sanitizers came from Tumbleroot and from Santa Fe Spirit. We talked about going out to parks. So we've got some banners that we've gotten together. We bought additional face masks as well. The plastic bottles, again, we try to use a local company, which is the Soap Refill Station. So this is a recycling soap. So we got them from her. And then we also, we tried as much as possible. So and then you'll see some of the things that Erminia and Pauline's department, the cultural department, arts and culture department have really been working on, which is when we did the last presentation for high vulnerability index communities was we should focus on bilingual messaging. We should focus on culturally relevant messaging and that would make the messaging more equitable. They brought in Carlos Medina. We wanted to expand the work that they have done with Carlos Medina. So we've done that as well. As I said, we brought in YouthWorks to help us put the kit bags together. Chainbreakers is going to be helping us get out. YouthWorks is very much, and Regina, who was on earlier, really helped us make sure that we practice everything in a safe way possible over at Market Street. And the other thing with the kit bags is once Chainbreakers goes out to the mobile parks and to the apartment communities, these will function kind of like door knockers. So they don't actually have to knock at the door. They don't have to, and people don't have to answer it. They'll simply be receiving masks and information and COVID prevention at their door through these little tote bags that we put together. And we also worked on the ice rink to get in some messaging there. So that's kind of where the money went in case that comes up, because I think that comes up a lot, where we still have 4,000 we can spend. And then we also have another program that we brought in retired teachers to help us reach out to the vulnerable communities and create educational material. But beyond the educational material that they're creating, it's really about the conversations that they're having. It's a pilot program at Capitol High School. And the benefits is not only do they start discussing things, the idea of the program is they create 15 public safety messages. It's not so much that will necessarily be used, which we will try to use the content, but it's in the developing the messaging, the conversations will be had of what is it that makes it so challenging, and what challenges do we face because of the COVID pandemic. And then they bring these messages home to their families, and these discussions are had at home as well. So that's kind of something else that we added along. And that's outside of this spending, outside the 200,000. That was an additional $50,000 for that project. So just to go through a little bit about the previous discussion, the high vulnerability index and the repercussions. This was just the stuff from last time. Does the city need to generate more equity, which everybody resoundingly said yes. I'm not really sure if this generated more equity. We're just simply reaching out to the high vulnerability index communities, and we're trying to do it in an equitable manner by doing it bilingual and by being culturally relevant. I think some of the other programs that community services is doing is definitely much more on the equitable side, but ours is much more of a communication and education and engaging people. So last time, one of the things that we talked about was getting the funding. We'd asked for 300 and we got 200. And again, may I just say, working cross-departmentally and instead of in silos has just been so helpful. We have Eli, who's been really our champion in the CARES Act committee. He's also brought in Amanda from his team, who's helped us out with all of the procurement. Armenia's doing on theirs. Michaela Biggins, who's in environmental services, who helps us out with the social media. And I don't think we would have gotten as much done if it hadn't been for the fact that everybody's helping from different departments, because it's not necessarily our business as usual role. This has nothing to do with land use necessarily. Nonetheless, Eli's championing it. And it's not necessarily, so it's the fact that we're working outside of our silos and everybody kind of chipping away at it that has been incredibly helpful. So we talked about Facebook ads last time. Let's just give you an overview of what did we do with this. You guys had asked if you'd also go to Instagram. The Facebook ads do go to Instagram. Again, Michaela Biggins really helped us out. The Arts and Culture Department developed a PSA announcement, which really took the mayor's message of the Santa Fe Promise and made it in Spanish and also made it culturally relevant. We decided to piggyback on that effort. And so we shifted. These were the original messages that we'd had and we did use for the Santa Fe Promise and just to do COVID prevention. And then we started shifting it towards more specific, and we got a lot of insights from Marcela Diaz in terms of what is it that we need to get messaging out on. So these are paid ads. The image is the same for all of them because we didn't have much imagery, but we wanted it to be relevant. So we just used Carlos Medina on all of them. And it's really, some of them are about whether or not people have a place to stay during COVID, in making sure people go into the Connect program for the flexible funding. The Santa Fe Promise was also one of the things that we promoted. Then we also had the NOVID application, the tracing application, and people for Connect again. And really Connect has been such a key part of, I think, our messaging. It's about help with rent, with food, with light, with water, with any kind of utilities. So this was part of the messaging that we went out. I think and Michaela really put those together in terms of the look and feel of them. Here you'll see some of the results in terms of the economic help, which you got 13,000 impressions, you got 482 link clicks through. The Cuide sus abuelos, which is take care of your grandparents messaging, 235. The financial help, and you'll see, I think the key messages that really is the financial help and the economic help, which are very similar in terms of messaging, but those are the ones that I think that you'll see the highest click-through rate on. Then we followed up with a second campaign, which I don't have the results on yet. We used, again, Michaela really came up with these images and she graphic designed them, and the insights really coming in from Marcela in terms of, what people don't necessarily know what to do when you do test positive. So it was kind of like, our messaging went along those lines. And one of the things that we found is not everything can be answered through Connect, because once we got in code, we reached out to Jennifer at the county, Kira here, and Julie and Rachel. You know, they were like, we can help with financial impact. We cannot help with necessarily directing people on how to, what to do in terms of COVID. So we really had to look over at the New Mexico Department of Health and their 1-800 line, which is what we put behind some of this. Did your employee test positive for COVID-19? A lot of things that Marcella really emphasized to us was working, and the importance of people having to keep working. And so therefore you can't necessarily, and what do you do if suddenly, you know, you think you might be and you shouldn't be going to work, but you feel like the pressure of it. So those are the kinds of messages that we started putting out, and those are paid messages on Facebook. And then we continued with our work on the NOVID app, putting out the lawn signs. And you'll see that also as part of the Facebook ads that we did was also the NOVID ads. And we also had flyers. We distributed the flyers, and I can't remember how many, but some our usual suspects, which is the communities and schools that always really help us out. We also always give masks to communities and schools. The disinfectant was a little too strong for them, so they gave that back to us. Food Depot, Kitchen Angels, and so we use all of them to kind of get things out. It's funny because it says crawl 1 week. All these things took a lot longer than I think I imagined. So disregard that. It's simply to give you an update of what we said that we would do and where kind of we went with that. So we did create the task force. Again, we brought in Youth Works, we brought in Chain Breakers, communication and market research lead to really kind of help us start coordinating this. And then one of the things that we said was we wanted to make those flyers to take out to the mobile home parks and the kits. So here's just to get an idea to give you, we, as I said, are changing the wheels on the bus as the bus moves along. So here's an idea of what the promotional material is. It has not been printed yet. It has been developed with, it will be bilingual in English and in Spanish. It will just be one thing that you receive. We have 10,000 kit bags. We may have to do it in different series. So we may have to go back to some of the apartment buildings or the mobile home parks and not do one wave, but do 2 waves. So that just kind of depends on how and quickly we get the kit bags. We ran out of masks, and then the county helped us get masks. And then because the promotional material isn't there, we also had the county and Chain Breakers. All of us came together to create flyers that we could start putting in there. But when you're talking about 10,000, that's a lot of flyers, and it's not necessarily something that you can turn around quickly. So here's the material, which is just kind of Promise 5 to save lives, which is kind of these 5 initiatives here: the Santa Fe Promise, Santa Fe Connect, the NOVID app, the Find the Resources that all together, tell other people, be an influencer, this game that comes in and, like, you know, are you at risk? What are some of the things that you might be doing to put you at risk? And again, the Promise 5 to save lives, which are these 5 different places where you can get resources, because I think resources has been one of the key things that we heard from the Department of Health, is that people need the resources. So they haven't been printed yet, they're developed. And then in parallel, you'll see here, this is over at Market Street in the Boneyard. We've got the kit bags, we have the masks, and we have all the plastic bottles, and over here's the sanitizer. All of those are kind of getting put together. There's 5 masks that come to per packet. So the 5 masks will be put in there, and 5 bottles of the sanitizer will be put in there as well. Here's some of the material. Here's some of the masks that were given to us by Santa Fe County. So it has a lot of the Connect programs, the material that they develop for the Connect programs. And I think Chain Breakers has already gotten out about 300 of them. I couldn't tell you which district quite yet, but I know that that is part of the plans of mapping and saying, where have we gone and how many have we distributed? So yes, that's some of the flyers that we've created in parallel for some of the bags, and they may not all be the same, just in case you get any kind of like complaints about the kit bags. It's true, they may not all be the same. I think we also received about 1,000 stuffed animals. that someone said that maybe if we wanted to put stuffed animals in them. So some of them will have stuffed animals in them. Some of the flyers that we wanted to make sure that we put was the county's emergency rent and mortgage assistance, the immigration assistance that's been developed with SOMOS, the Connect program, Chainbreakers mortgage hotline. So just kind of the information in terms of resources. Again, we kind of went back to flyers because of the pamphlets haven't been developed yet. And signage in parks, you'll see when we started this, we were not in the red zone as we currently are. And we had the GCCC was open. So we definitely thought it would be a good idea to be at the ice rink, have a message at the ice rink. As you can see, we try to promote alltogethersantafe.org/promise. Why? Because the key was also, let's give a place where when you arrive at it, it's in Spanish. So I think that's been one of the places. And that was, again, Micaela who really helped us put that on the website and get that material together. And then we have banners. We've got 15 of them. And I think this one we are going to be working closely with parks to see where we put the banners up. And this is what the banners would look like. And this is the program that I spoke about with the retired teachers, where they're creating about 15 messages. It's a competition amongst the students. They work with educators, both the retired ones and current ones, to develop the messages. Some of the messages will be produced. There's 2 messages which have already been produced. One which is get tested, another one which is don't share masks. Did I give the message of like, is sharing masks is something that happens? I don't actually know that, but I do know that that's one of the things that they're seeing in their community as something that can be problematic. And maybe that's something and so I think that the program is incredibly insightful for us as well. And so we're really glad that we're able to get extra funding for this program, and Mary McCoy approved, and so did Fran, an emergency procurement so that we could bring them on and do this program. Some of the things that we didn't necessarily have that were part of the conversation funding for was bus advertising. I think people had mentioned maybe you could do text messaging or phone banks or alert signups. I'm afraid that right now, as you can see, we have $5,000 that we've got left. So the 5,000 really it doesn't cover those. And I mean, they're excellent suggestions. It just wasn't feasible within what we had. It wasn't feasible. And also I think especially with the December 30th deadline. And with that, I think if there's anything else, Eli, that you wanted to add.
Thanks, Liz. No, I think there's just the one other sort of idea that, we came up with as a team early on, and as part of this shift to Santa Fe Promise 2.0 was really thinking about how can we create a communication infrastructure or network that would allow us to be able to communicate changing messages to those most impacted as the nature of the pandemic changes over time. And I think, part of this sort of Santa Fe Promise 2.0 is a response to the sort of unpredictability or changing nature of the pandemic and how it's impacting our community, whether it be about health or economics or the impacts to families and school-age children, whatever it might be. And so this new version is really designed to be able to, simultaneously communicate around ideas around, whether it be the Novid contact tracing app, our Santa Fe Connect direct services program, things you can do in your personal life to keep yourself safe and keep those around you safe. And so we're hoping that this investment that we've made in this shift that we've kind of made to Santa Fe 2.0, Santa Fe Promise 2.0, will give us that flexibility and allow us to be a little bit more agile as we will likely be dealing with the pandemic over the next 6 to 8 months. And so that's one of the ideas that's embedded in here. I don't know if we explicitly sort of talked about that in the presentation, but that's certainly sort of a guiding concept or idea that informed how we approach this next iteration.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all that information. Can you maybe I think we can not share the screen for a bit. We might need to go back to it, but it just helps with being able to see everyone. And then, hold on just a second while we. So questions from the committee. Councillor Cassett Sanchez, you have your hand up.
Sorry, I was hitting the wrong button to unmute myself there. Thank you both so much for this presentation, and I really appreciate that you really took the feedback that we had given last time and incorporated it. That was very wonderful to see. Actually, sorry, you just unshared the screen, and maybe you don't need to reshare it, but I was curious about the reach, impressions, and click links and what each of those things, click links, that's understandable, but reach versus impressions, I was curious about getting some definitions on what that means precisely.
Sorry, I made you drop that too soon.
I'm a social media Luddite, so I'm going to have to kick that over to Liz to explain the difference between a click, an impression, and a reach.
Don't worry, I'm there too. I always say that I'm the worst millennial that's ever been a millennial, so we're good.
Yeah, well, that would help for us to have Michaela here, because she's the one who gives us kind of like, here's the format. You can only use so many words. You have to do, because I give her like longer things and she's like, what are you doing? I need to have only a headline of 25 characters and I need a body of this, and then she's really great because she comes up with the imagery. So I know what the clicks are. I don't really know what the difference is in terms of the reach versus the impressions. I'm sorry. I think we'll have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah, no problem. If you could just have her give me a 101 there. I was curious to hear more about that. You probably mentioned this. The flyers that we're printing, are those coming in English and Spanish?
So we're really trying to do everything in both English and Spanish. So even the initial version, Santa Fe Promise 1.0, the posters, the buttons, everything, all the sort of collateral that was produced in the first iteration of the promise was also done both in English and Spanish. And we've tried to really maintain the bilingual, materials throughout everything we're doing. And a lot of our signage, like the yard signs and other things that are printed on both sides, one side in English and one side in Spanish. And we're doing the same with a lot of our other promotional materials, like our flyers and anything else we're putting in the kits or distributing to folks through the food distribution sites.
Perfect. Thank you. That was actually my next question is the balance of English to Spanish communication. So I definitely appreciate that. And then I'm sorry, I think you did mention this, but I forgot. You $5,000 left. What are we doing with those dollars?
So a lot, Liz, please chime in here as well. A lot of the, we've been purchasing a lot of what you could call PPE with this. Some of it's branded with the Santa Fe Promise logo. Some of it's just hitting, coming straight from the distributor into the distribution kits. So that $5,000 could be spent, towards additional PPE so that we can continue to distribute beyond sort of the December 30th deadline. But there also might be other opportunities to expand some of our marketing and digital communication campaigns as well. And so we're that money is there. We'll have to make some decisions on how to expend it here in the next week or so because we're coming up on our deadlines. But that's sort of where we are with the budget. And there's definitely some areas where it could be spent sort of along the same lines of money that's already been spent or in the same categories where money has already been spent.
Yeah, Councilor Cassett Sanchez, I agree with Eli. I think more than likely what we'll be doing is purchasing masks. I think one of the challenges that we have is the fact that we would like to use some local providers, but local providers, one, can't provide the same quantity as necessarily national providers. So it might be an opportunity to buy something from a local mask provider, and they're also more costly when you do this on a local basis. I'm sure from the food discussion, that's kind of what we know. So I think that that might be one of it. And I just Googled the reach versus impressions. Reach is the number of people, impressions is the number of times. So it may have reached you and you might have seen it twice. The impressions would count the twice, the reach would count only the one.
Okay, good to know. Very, very interesting information. Thank you. And then, how are we doing with coordination of messaging from both the county? I saw that there was some overlap there, as well as what is coming out of the state. So just making sure that our messaging is consistent. You know, they often say, I think the rule, gosh, I'm going back to COM 101. It was a long time ago. It's like 7 times, 7 different ways to really get the message across. So I'm curious how we are coordinating that messaging with county and state.
I'll be honest, I come from an advertising background and we are doing terrible. It is a patchwork. Everything changes as you go along, because when we started off with the All Together Santa Fe page, which was supposed to be about resources. And then Santa Fe Promise had a different objective to it. But then we realized we had to start shifting our messaging. And we also then started incorporating Connect. So normally you would want to be more succinct and precise, and you would want to be consistent. You saw the imagery. Once we use Carlos Medina, sometimes we use generic images. They have Muy Macho over at the county. Sometimes we need to use the New Mexico Department of Health material. Connect has their own branding. So it's really, it would be, in terms of Comms 101, it would be off. We try to coordinate as much as possible. We try to really, and different programs have different sponsors as well. So one we're doing with Chain Breakers for the hotline. Another one is with Somos. And so the logos are different. I think what I can say is, I think in COVID, we have worked more collaboratively, more collectively. We have been in contact regularly. And that, I'd say, is the bright side. In terms of communication and its effectiveness, it's all over the place.
But I think that goes back to a comment I made a second ago about really trying to think about building out the infrastructure so that we can adapt and we can pivot as we need to. And if we need to sort of realign our messaging to better match what's coming from other trusted sources, we can do that fairly quickly. So it's not just looking at it from a content standpoint, but also looking at it from a channel communication standpoint and trying to sort of do both so that when the time comes to pivot our messaging, or if we need to, in 2 months, start talking about vaccines or whatever it might be, some of that stuff is in place, right? And so that we don't have to rebuild the whole thing from scratch. We just have to sort of change the content to the moment. And then we can use those existing channels to push that communication out to our constituents.
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate that, especially as we move forward to what we can all hope is potentially the tail end of this pandemic and moving out of it. But as you said earlier, Eli, we're looking still 6 to 8 months. And so opportunity still to keep improving on that. I look forward to hearing more about it. I know that flexibility is going to be important. You know, right now we're kind of in this 2-week cycle with the state where we will have that reevaluation. And so how we continue to address that as those orders keep coming down. I appreciate that you guys are really having an eye towards that and making sure that ability to spin on the spot is there. I know that you've built up a whole infrastructure very quickly. And thank you. I really want to thank you all for the work that you've done on this. It's, as Liz mentioned, I believe this is not your normal day job. And we're incredibly grateful that you have taken the time to undertake these important tasks. And again, incorporating that feedback and the collaboration across our staff. It's really wonderful to see. So thank you both. And please thank the other team members that have been working on this, because we really do appreciate it. That's all.
Great. Councilor Garcia, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question as we begin to think about the future. Is vaccination outreach, vaccination education part of the plan right now?
I don't think it's necessarily part of the plan in sort of explicit terms. I think, you know, vaccination's been in the public discourse for a long time, right? Very shortly after we first started experiencing this. So I think what we're doing now acknowledges vaccination outreach, vaccination education, in the sense of, again, that we're trying to build a system that will allow us to sort of message around whatever we see as the important message of the moment. And so I think it's realistic, you know, with all the positive news that's coming out right now about vaccinations gaining approval, starting to hit, you know, states for distribution in the next few weeks to coming months, that we will be able to, when the time is right, respond pretty quickly to getting that information out to folks in a way that they can understand it, and hopefully using community partners so that there's high level of trust around that messaging, so we can get a lot of adoption and participation in a vaccination program.
Okay,
Councilor
awesome.
Garcia, I think that's I completely agree with Eli, and I think we also have another focus, which is the December 30th deadline. So right now, I think we're focused on how do we make sure we use the funds, how do we make sure that we get that as soon as possible. So I think the vaccine is very forward thinking, and we need to right now be very short-term thinking. How do we maximize what we can do now?
Understandable. I just want to kind of start to begin to plant that seed, because as Eli mentioned, you know, there should be distribution here in the coming weeks, and there will be a priority in regards to who is going to be eligible to receive the vaccination. And I think it's critical that we educate the community on who is going to be considered first priority, because I'd hate to overwhelm whatever system is set up. That way we can quickly get folks vaccinated and hopefully have a proper process. Thank you guys for the information. Keep up the great work. No other comments, Madam Chair.
Councilor Villarreal.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Well, thank you both, for mostly Liz, who presented. It was very helpful. And I was just curious what the status is on the Novid contact tracing app. And the reason why I ask about it is because I saw a feed on Facebook and people were confused about it. Like, oh, I didn't know what this was for. How does this work? Does this make sense? Have you downloaded it? And I'm just curious if you all know what the status is of how many people are utilizing it. Do we have a number on that yet?
Madam Chair and Councilor, I'm going to speak first and let Eli talk about the outreach. So we just recently completed the procurement process for the dashboard, which will actually allow us to track this anonymous information and the public awareness. But the Santa Fe Promise team here, Eli and Liz, are integrating what the information, how to use it into their campaign. So the procurement piece took a little while, and as you know, you can't really launch anything big without the procurement signed. And so procurement documents are just completely signed, and so we can go full force in these last couple of weeks to get that going. And additionally, I am working with our emergency management team to get reimbursement through FEMA for the remaining 6 months of the fiscal year, so it doesn't burden the city's already taxed budget. So that's kind of where we are on the legal and procurement side.
Great. Does anyone know how many numbers people have?
So I believe
downloaded?
Part of the Novid procurement is part of it is because it is a free app to anyone who wants to download it. But I think the procurement is around, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rich, is around building out a dashboard for this specifically tailored to the city of Santa Fe that would track all of our local downloads and registrations, so that we would know how many people in the community are using the app. I think Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was some sort of target percentage of the population that we needed to sort of make the app sort of work or make it sort of viable. And it's actually a surprisingly low number. I think it was in the sort of magnitude of like 10%. So
Or
if we could
less.
get, yeah, so if we get 5 to 10% of our constituents downloading the app and using it, it just runs in the background on your phone. It doesn't use any GPS or anything like that. It simply uses sonar technology or ultrasound technology. And so it's pinging other devices that way. And the nice thing about that is it doesn't go through walls or enclosures, so you don't get false contacts by like your neighbor next door to you in a neighboring apartment, because GPS says you are within however many feet of each other. It's really based off of these sound waves connecting from device to device. Anyways, that would, if we could get 5 to 10% of our constituents using this, we could actually make a really important impact in terms of contact tracing and notification in the city.
Yeah, and Councillor, if I also add that now that the pyramid is done, we get this community code. I think it's going to be Santa Fe. It's just going to be the word Santa Fe. And that community code will then tie into this major dashboard, which we'll be able to provide updates through the Quality of Life Committee of what our stats are. So I think that there's like a 30-person test. There are a lot more people that have the app, but there's like a 30-person test going on right now. But once the community code is shared and it'll go through the Santa Fe Promise and other outreach, we'll be able to really track what they call subscriptions are. They're anonymous, but there'll be subscriptions we'll know where they are. And we're hoping to target our areas of 507 and 505.
Thank you. Is this an app that's used nationwide across the country, or?
It's being used at universities right now, and we might be the first city that will launch the app across the country. But they use it at universities because there's a lot of congregating in colleges and universities. And so it started at a university as a startup company, and then they went out to universities and they realized that cities were also being affected by the pandemic. And so they've been reaching out to cities. And so World College over at in Las Vegas has it now, and Las Vegas was going to join in, but I think someone's talking about the procurement issues, and they're having the same problems we had, and so we probably will be first to market with it. And we've been working with them for a couple months.
Got it. I guess I'm always curious about how many people will utilize it, because it's if you're positive, you have to be the person that actually adds the information on the app saying that you are. And I don't know, I'm just curious how many people do that.
Yeah, that's a good question. And one of the things that we are working with now that we have this sort of dashboard piece together is that we're trying to connect the Novit app with the Department of Health, because the Department of Health has number-specific positive cases. They can load it based upon zip code into the system. So when you're in a supermarket and you have this information in there, that number will say, oh, that number is here. It doesn't know who it is, but that number is attached to a specific place. So that's one of the ways that they believe that they can work with the health agencies in cities and states to be anonymous, but also allow you, just like again, I talk about being on a radar system, that you come into a storm and you'll know that you're getting close to where the lightning is. So
that's interesting.
People may not, some people, when they find out that they've tested positive, may put their DOH number in, but some won't. And so we can partner with the DOH to put the numbers in.
So that hasn't happened yet then, right? The partnership.
It has not, yeah.
Okay, because I think once we get that connection, it will be a lot more useful.
Yes, and we'll be able to showcase this dashboard as a real-time dashboard. So our next, one of the QLs that are coming up, we'll be able to show an update on what's happening with Novit.
Great. And then the other social media question, you said that we started using Instagram. What's the handle? Because when I search City of Santa Fe, it's tourism.
Councilor Villarreal, great question. So we do not have an Instagram page, but when you do ads, again, Michaela from Environmental Services explained to me that when you do the Facebook ads, they link, because Facebook and Instagram are one, that then they can go into the feed and you can go into Instagram, even though it's not necessarily coming from our page directly, but because it's paid advertising. It's not just a post that you put on there. We paid to get extra impressions reach, I guess.
Okay. I'd be interested. I've never actually seen the City of Santa Fe ads on Instagram. I have seen the poorly done, poorly executed Spanish versions for the Santa Fe County. Those were really poorly done, sorry to say. Just because it wasn't culturally relevant and the Spanish was incorrect. So I actually like our communication. So I'm just curious how to find them in terms of the ads. If you could find out later for me. I don't know if they just pop up.
Counselor, I don't think you can find them. They find you. So as you're scrolling, if you have an Instagram account, if you are scrolling through your Instagram, there will occasionally be ads that pop up for, and how they decide, that's above my pay grade, but what ads get inserted there, I don't know, but they just pop up. You can't find them.
Okay. Yeah, I figured, but because I follow city stuff, I thought I would be able to see them. So that's all I have. Thank you all for your information. I appreciate it.
Great. Other questions or comments from the committee? Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. Appreciate all the work. It's considerable and important. So thank you. All right. It is 6:45. We have one more presentation. Director Brown, you're going to talk to us about web access.
Public Wi-Fi and broadband.
Public Wi-Fi, sorry.
Yep. And I will make sure I make this quick and informative. So I'm going to share my screen if I could. Let me know. Yeah. So I'm just going to give a quick update on our public Wi-Fi program, districts 2, 3, and 4, and then also about broadband. I don't have a broadband architect in my department, but I am sort of juggling that responsibility because it's a long-term play for us, and I just want to let you know kind of where we are from that standpoint. So phase 1 of our public Wi-Fi, as you know, we reached out to 12 public schools and we used 5 of our public spaces. And those are all installed now. They've all been up. We just actually recently increased the speed of the service in the public spaces and not at the schools. Actually, the schools are now maintaining them and we're trying to get them to share their data with us. And so what I'm going to show you next is the data that we know of from our public spaces. And so this slide here really shows our usage. What's important about the slide, beyond that blue trend line, is that we have an average of 800 to 900 average users per week. So that tells me that 1% of our population is actually using these public Wi-Fi spaces, not just the schools, which we don't have the data for, but this is actually the GCCC, the public libraries, et cetera. So that's a really good return on equity for the investment we've made in public Wi-Fi. For this average user being about 800 to 900 per week. You can see in the trend lines that, you can tell when a holiday's happening, or you can tell when a busy week's happening. But as we got them launched and we picked up, you can see it went from in the beginning of 392 up to about 527, I think is the highest there. And then in the Thanksgiving week that just happened, it dropped down. So that just meant that people stayed in, hopefully. But as I said, the big aha here is the number of users per week that are coming to use the public Wi-Fi. In our phase 2 part, we are currently looking at building out at the DPS tower, which is the police academy off of Jaguar and Cerrillos. And there's a big tower there that we're going to put a broadband antenna. It's very small, maybe 9 inches wide, and that will help us with our district-wide program that we're looking for. And my last meeting here, we talked about District 3 and 4, looking at the mobile home parks using point-to-point Wi-Fi. We have been calling and emailing and writing to all the mobile home parks, and we've been somewhat successful. We've got a couple here, and I have a slide showing you some of the parks that have agreed to start. We're doing some site visits because they're very unique and dense locations. But we are planning to put the point-to-point in the ones that we have once we get the funding through. And then we also realized that the Chumisa Center is kind of the commerce center for the airport road area. And so we've been working with the owner of Chumisa Center to see if we can put a public Wi-Fi antenna on the top of the center of the building. And he's agreed to allow us to do that. So we're about to do a visit there to build the site out for installation. We originally were going to use CARES Act funding to fund this project, but we realized about a week ago that in order for us to use the funds and be eligible, you have to buy the equipment and install it all by December 30th. And that is not going to happen because we're still doing site visits and working with our vendors, getting the equipment, and we probably won't have all of this done by early spring before we can get this done. So we will not be able to use CARES Act funding, but I am working with the finance team to see if we can possibly find some general fund money that we can use to continue this project so that if another round of funding, CARES Act funding happens with the new federal administration, we'll be able to work through and keep going on the work that we're trying to get there. So on the phase 2 side, this is District 3, and you can see where the red circles are. Those are the mobile home parks that have, you know, between 200 and 400 units inside. We have been talking to all those in the big circles, and the little circles are where schools are. And then there's a black dot nearby, and that's where we're looking at where we could actually add more Wi-Fi point-to-point antennas. You can't see the Chamisa Center, but it's about right here. And we are also going to look at Casitas right here. There's another mobile home park that we did not reach out to, but we're thinking that that's another place where we're going to add on. So that's kind of where we're looking at for District 3. On District 4, these are the very large mobile home parks that we're working with. We're finding that we have to put telephone poles in that are at a 35 foot height to reach further into the parks. So there's some zoning involved with getting this together, but that's a part of the site visit, and that's why it's taking a little bit longer than one would think to put this install into the district area. On the phase 3 side, we're actually going to expand out because in District 2, there's additional public housing and mobile home parks that we want to address and install public Wi-Fi. So we're hoping that in the year 2021, that more CARES Act funding or of that type will come around. And right now I've been reading the news, and it looks like the incoming federal administration is hoping to put $8 billion in for broadband funding. And so we're hoping to leverage some of that if it comes to pass through Congress. So as we look at District 2, this is a map that gives you a sense of what our goals are. There is some mobile home parks and areas in Hopewell Man. This bottom section right here is the Midtown campus. This is the Hopewell Man neighborhood. And these are large public housing. So these are areas that we are looking at in District 2 on top of these areas here. So as we go to the broadband and beyond in 2021, as I said, we were unable to use the CARES Act funding because it expires on December 30th. So we're looking at other options to keep the momentum on this build out. But we are hoping to further engage the mobile home parks, at least to understand what the needs are so that when we're ready to launch, we have completed that piece. That's a free thing. It's all engagement. Most of them we've reached out to and connected with are very excited about having this in their neighborhood. So that's a good thing for us from a community standpoint. As we go in and flip to the broadband side for 2021 and beyond, there is talk and ideas around building a 10-year city build-out plan. We'll require a lot of capital outlay. We estimate it's going to be about 25 million plus. What we have learned is that you can't dig into the ground because of archaeology, so we might use power poles to build out this map and architecture for the full city. And we're currently working with Santa Fe County. They have not, in the past couple of years, put any budget aside for this sort of project, but it has something that's on their docket now. And then I'm also working with the Santa Fe Chamber. They have a broadband committee, which we're all working together. We're creating some strategies around what it would look like in the city of Santa Fe and the surrounding county. And then we'll pursue a third-party analysis for our understanding of what the strategic plan will be. So in my FY21 budget, I will put a funding request in to match or get near what the county might be able to bring together so that we can create this this analysis for the map for the future. Again, this will support these high-use, low-access neighborhoods that we have. There's a lot of them on the east side. As you know, there's the south side also, and then in our underserved areas in districts 2 to 4, we are building public Wi-Fi, but there are a lot of neighbors there that would probably benefit from a full build out of something that the city is endorsing that provides competitive access for everyone. And then we're also looking and monitoring any EDA grants. We'll probably wait till after the federal inauguration before we see any broadband money being put in for what we call infrastructure. That's one of the big platforms, I think, for the incoming president-elect. And then one of the new things we're working on is that we have a very large broadband pipe at the rail yard, and we are seeing that some tech companies are moving here from the West Coast, and they are settling in the downtown area, taking unused or underused space in buildings in the downtown area. And what's happening is that they have very poor broadband service there. So we're looking at trying to leverage our broadband pipe and use point-to-point into some of the downtown properties to fill in for those building owners who are now converting some of their second and third floors from storage to office space, mini office space, 2 or 3 offices only. So that's something new that's come up in the last actually 3 weeks. So that's something new where we're actually looking at ways to build new architecture around the broadband that's at the rail yard area. And with that, I stand for questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments from the committee? Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quick clarification, Rich. Did I hear you correctly that we're going to be looking at beyond 2021 installing fiber optics above ground, not underground? And if so, why not underground? I mean, studies have shown that, especially if we're going to be looking at 5G, underground is the safest option for the community. And so why would we develop an infrastructure that we might have to scrap and means of in developing something that's safer for the community?
Thank you, Councilor. That's an important question. Well, I want to first start by saying 5G is very different from broadband and fiber. 5G is a wireless phone spectrum that currently there is really no appetite in the city and county. But on the broadband side and the fiber side, one of the reasons why we are looking at the poles is because Santa Fe is a 400-year-old city, and it's full of archaeology that's just 10 feet below surface. So the archaeology of the neighbors in town, neighbors in areas, will likely stall some of the work that's being done. So some of it may go underground if we know that there's not going to be a hindrance with archaeology. But most of the downtown out, sort of I'd say the midtown, archaeology is probably one of the hindrances that we have if we're going to build an architecture or a map of the city. So 5G is a wholly separate spectrum that does nothing to do with fiber. And with the fiber, we probably will be a hybrid, but we're looking at on the telephone poles. And Public Works is actually working on a replacement project. So it might be a great way for us to sort of partner together. But because of the archaeology is why we're looking at. So that's why we want to do this third-party analysis to figure out what archaeology laid out in the city where we see clarity, or we see bones, or we see remains, and how can we map it out so that it becomes an easier way to do it.
Great. Thanks so much, Rich. And I appreciate the forethought and thinking beyond the pandemic that we're currently in, because the need for access is not going to go away once the pandemic's over. It's going to just continue to probably be stronger. That's the direction our society is moving. So thank you for thinking of that. No further questions, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation, Rich.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions from the committee? Thank you, Rich. Really appreciate it. Really important. As Councilor Garcia says, this is something that we've got to start planning for and moving forward in installing and getting access. And so thank you. All right. With that, we will move on to matters from the committee, or actually matters from staff. Sorry.
I have nothing tonight, Madam Chair.
Okay, matters from the committee. I don't see anybody raising their hand. Matters from the chair. Our next meeting is January 20th, and we have some housing presentations planned for that meeting, and look forward to seeing you then. But I know we're going to meet many times before in other venues, so have a good night. Thanks,
Good night,
everyone.
everyone.
We're adjourned.
Good night.
Good night.